Peace and blessings, everyone. Welcome to Spotlight. I'm Ejuenka, and we have another interesting program for you tonight. You know, this week just gone by was Education Week that culminated in the big gala event in the multipurpose sports complex honoring teachers, which is an excellent idea. It was an excellent idea. And we're going to be talking with Dr. Angel Smith. He's the head of the Virgin Island Studies Department at H. Lavely Star Community College, about how we can restore our teachers to the prominence they once had in our community. At one point, especially when we were growing up, teachers were the head. You know, what teacher said goes. When teacher made a complaint to your parents, they got results. How do we restore our teachers, our most important profession, to its olden days prominence? We're going to talk some about that. Also, we have the Complaints Commissioner here, and he's going to talk about the purpose for the Complaints Commission, how you can use the Complaints Commission and the Commissioner for redress for your grievances, issues you have with various government departments, civil servants, whatever the case may be. And I know there are a lot of you with labor and immigration complaints. But the Commissioner is here to talk to you about all those issues and how you can navigate some of those challenges that you're having, and how you can solve your problems and your grievances, and how he can help you and how you can help him and help the Commission. We're going to be right back with more Spotlight after these words from our sponsors.
This program is sponsored by the law firm of J.S. Archibald & Co. and by the trust company J.S. Archibald Trust Services Limited, both of Roadtown, Tortola, BVI.
Welcome back to Spotlight. I'm Ejuenka. I'm here with Dr. Angel Smith. Dr. Smith, good to see you.
Good to see you again, Prominence. Thanks for having me.
Yes. We had a good time the last time. I expect the same thing again. And this time I don't have you for long. So the Education Week just went by. Were you invited to the awards dinner?
Yes.
You went?
I was unable to attend.
You were unable to attend? Yeah. The awards dinner, you think that it was something that was good to help to strengthen teachers' morale?
But I think, yes, anything that helps to bring the teaching profession to the forefront and to highlight the work of teachers, I think is useful.
Okay, so, and from what did you hear anything about how the teachers felt about being honored and awarded? And
I haven't had that interaction.
Do you think that anything was fair? Because, you know, when it comes to awarding certain people, certain accolades, there's always that challenge.
Yeah, and I know that in years past, during my tenure as Chief Education Officer, when I took over, there was the long-standing practice of having a Teacher of the Year. And I know as good as that was, it had difficult moments with that regards, and eventually that was terminated because some of those issues that kept surfacing here and there. But I think, you know, it's good to be able to look at the rank and file of teachers and say, well, look, you can recognize people for their good work and the qualities that they bring to the profession.
What you think that the teaching, am I wrong for saying that the teaching profession is not respected the way it used to be when we were growing up? Am I wrong for saying that?
I don't think you're wrong, because we'll have to look at the Virgin Islands society at that time, in the 60s, even into the 70s, and before that. You know, teachers were the key professionals in the BVI. In fact, persons who advanced in their education did so through the teaching profession. That was one way where you moved up academically. The majority of persons who moved into the civil service came from the teaching profession. So, you started out as a teacher, and then you moved on from there. So the profession was one that was sought after because that is where you got your foothold in a career base in teaching, and then in other areas. You branched off into other areas. So it was a different time. Education provided employment, whereas you didn't have many other areas where there was employment. So it was a different time that we're looking at.
Well, it was a time when the teachers felt special in the community as well, along with it being one of the few professions that you could dance in. It seems to me that teachers felt special, and the teaching profession itself had a certain status.
Yes.
What can we do, you think, to bring that status back?
Well, I think we'll have to look at what it means to be a teacher, and above the fact that you're in a classroom, you are imparting knowledge, you're assessing students. But if you look beyond that, what does it really mean to be a teacher? And I think a few things come to mind. One, to be a teacher is to be a nation builder, because you are molding the minds of the future of the country. So you have in your classroom children and young people, and your job now is to look down the road in terms of the world that these children are going to be a part of when they come out of the school, and you're supposed to prepare them for that. That means that as a teacher, you must have some foresight in terms of your community, in terms of what your students would be required to do.
So the teachers themselves need to have that feel that sense of importance.
Exactly. Yeah. So so you're building a nation, because it isn't just educating children; it is educating children to take their role in society and to build and carry out the work that is required to make the territory a nation, as it were. The teachers are also transmitters of values. The last time I was here, we talked a lot about the values, and outside of the home, in the classroom, that is where those values are reinforced, and so the teachers are transmitters of values. Another point, the teachers are role models within their community. I can recall growing up in my community and looking to teachers, persons that you knew who were teachers, and you saw in them something that you want to emulate, you want to be like that. So it's very important that we understand that. And the other point is that teachers must have the capacity to identify and develop potential in students.
Well, see, teachers need a lot of teaching. teachers need a lot of education themselves.
Yeah, because it's
our teachers adequately prepared for that vision, that feeling, that responsibility, that awesome responsibility of taking on the role of building a nation.
But I think that is where it's at, and you cannot have too much preparation. Because to be a teacher, it means that you have to be all those things and then some. And you can't afford to fall short in any one area. So you must always be like a good politician, testing the winds to see where it's coming from, and then preparing for it. So you have to be always preparing your students. You have to be looking at your students, and you reinforce good behavior. You find ways to discourage bad behavior, things that you see in your students. So teachers need to be prepared for their work. Now, you say whether teachers are well prepared. I think over the years, we have gone through a system where we try to find the best way, and sometimes the most cost-effective way, to prepare teachers for the role which they must fulfill within the classroom. So you no longer have teachers working for extended periods who are untrained. After a few years as a teacher trainee, you go on and you do your associate degree in education. That's the first level of teaching, a professional development. And then from there, persons go on to do a bachelor's degree, whether in elementary education or in a specific field, or in secondary education in a particular subject area, focusing on a subject area. And these courses are designed with studies in education psychology, developmental psychology, to help teachers, to prepare them for this role which they must fill. So I think we have been able to train teachers, which was one of the difficulties. We didn't have that opportunity way back then in the 40s and the 50s, even in the 60s. The options for sending people away, they were few and far between. But then even at that time, there was local systems developed through which teachers were trained.
Well, you said something that kind of scared me, because while it's right there to be seen, I hadn't thought of it, and that was the teachers feeling to themselves, taking the responsibility upon themselves and realizing their own importance in nation building.
Yeah.
And what all the things that you just talked about there, getting a bachelor's degree and getting training, seems to be the technical aspect of teaching, as opposed to the broader educational aspect of what a teacher needs.
Well, the thing is that one helps with the other, because once you have gone through the process, then you are given some basic tools now which you must come and utilize in your classroom.
So you learn how to learn.
Exactly.
And the teacher learns how to learn.
Exactly. You go through the process, and then in that process, especially in the initial teacher training aspect, that's more of a hands-on methods. You're talking about methods, how to teach maths, how to teach reading, the things that you must do in your classroom, how to plan a lesson, and you go through your practical sessions where you have your practical teaching, and then you're assessed and persons give you guidance. So the preparation is there, but then I think teachers now need to be at that position where they see that they're important, and then they utilize what they have learned in their sessions in terms of their training, and then try to apply that based on the students that they're working with.
So the ministry is sending a couple of teachers to Hertfordshire County in England for a 2 to 4 month course. I suspect that at best that could just give them some insight of classroom behavior, some insights into some teaching methods, but really the kind of training we're talking about, you would need a considerable more time.
But I think that is more in terms of the management side, and looking at the United Kingdom in terms of how they have developed and management of their schools, because they have reached a system where there are schools that are managed by professional managers, because they see the school is not just the traditional way as we saw school. It is like a business, and run like a business. So you're talking about being able to manage a school. So these persons no doubt would shadow persons who are within schools and able to see how they go about the process. But like you say, there's still some more that you would need, because that would just be a sort of a general introduction. So you get the aha experience. So that's what you can do. That's how you do it. But now to come back and to be able to apply that, you need to understand how their system works as opposed to how our system works. What was done a few years ago, there was a program that was developed through the OECS, the Education Reform Unit in St. Lucia. And this was a management system, a sort of an in-service course that was developed for managers and senior teachers. And this was done across the Eastern Caribbean, where you looked at the issues that we have to deal with in our area. We look at how our schools are designed, we look at how our system of management, and then you come up with a course to help principal, head teachers, senior teachers to be able to prepare themselves for that management role. So it's like the same thing that was done, but now we're doing it externally with another organization, which would have its benefits also.
Yeah. Well, times have changed, and economically and socially in the territory, and I'm looking at it from a cultural perspective, as we spoke about a couple of weeks ago, where a lot of the cultural norms that parents are supposed to transfer to children are not being transferred. And they're not being transferred for perhaps a couple of reasons. One being that parents probably don't know those values, those cultural values to transfer. But the bigger problem that I see is one where parents, whether it's a single parent household or a two-parent household, parents are working, either trying to make ends meet or trying to keep up with the Joneses. And we have developed now in the territory something called latchkey children, meaning that children are getting up, parents are already gone, they're trying to fix their breakfast themselves, maybe eat some potato chips and a Coke, have their key to let themselves out of the house, go to school, come back, nobody's home, they let themselves in, watch TV and drink up some Coke and some Pepsi. And are we going to have to get our teachers now to help to transfer those values, help to train our children, since they're going to be the ones that are with them mostly? Are we going to have to shift some of that responsibility onto teachers, since we ourselves are unable or unwilling to transfer those cultural values?
Well, I think this is something that we saw coming. As I said, as teachers, you have to look down the road and try to see, well, where's your society going? What is it your students would need for that particular date when they come out of school? So you can't just teach in isolation. And so it's something that we saw coming towards us. When I worked in the system as a guidance officer, those are some of the issues that we dealt with, and try to develop systems in schools where we taught values education, because we recognize that, in fact, that the values that we taught the students were coming to school with, that they weren't coming with them, because parents didn't really have time, parents weren't really dealing with that. So we noticed that the school needed to take on more of that responsibility. So when I worked in the system, as I said, as a guidance officer, we looked at values, and we dealt with those issues to help children to understand the importance of certain values within society. And these are things that traditionally the old teachers did. Now we have to literally sit down and put a course for it. But there are certain behaviors that were unacceptable in a classroom, in a traditional classroom, now which teachers would probably not even think twice about. I can't be bothered, because it means now that you are literally stepping outside of your role as a curriculum in terms of teaching your subject matter. You become a parent. Exactly. And whether or not as teachers we are prepared for that. So if we are to restore teachers to that traditional role, the teachers themselves have to look at their own position. What is it I need to do to ensure that I do a good job? And these are some of the things that you have to bear in mind.
We're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back and we're going to wrap it up. I want to talk about the standards that the ministry is trying to raise, the level of teaching standards, licensing, the accreditation. Are these endeavors going to scare teachers or scare people away from the teaching profession, because the qualifications for teaching is going to become more vigorous? We're going to talk a little bit about that when we come back right after these words from our sponsors. Keep it locked right here to Spotlight.
Spotlight is brought to you by Bolo's High-Tech Printery, Virgin Island Motors, and Clarence Thomas Limited.
Welcome back to Spotlight. I'm here with Dr. Angel Smith, the head of the Virgin Island Studies Department in East Community College, former Chief Education Officer. We are talking about how can we restore teachers and the teaching profession to its once prominent role in our community. Raising the assessment, the student assessment, raising the teacher qualifications, will that give teachers prestige, give the education system prestige, or would that scare teachers? Would they I already hear some teachers grumbling about the licensing component of their development.
Well, I think teachers themselves need to understand that even after you've become qualified, you have a degree, that you can't just stay there. You need to continue to develop yourself. So there must always be some ongoing professional development. And in every profession, all of us, for example, we go to a doctor and we sit in a doctor's office and we look around on the wall and we look at his certificates, and we feel good when we see that there is a recent one, that he was recently
he's keeping up to date.
He's keeping up to date. Yeah. But if you go in and you see something that is from way back, and the old stethoscope isn't working, the coat is all, you become worried. You want to know that whoever is dealing with you is on the cutting edge. And I think it's the same in the classroom. So we can't expect to have it with everybody else and every other profession, and we don't have it in the school, because that is where it's needed. Teachers must always be up to date.
They can't remain stagnant.
No, you can't. You have to be able to, as I said, you have to be able to look down the road at any one point in time and foresee what 5 years is going to look like in 5 years' time, and that is what your student needs to be prepared for. Social
Marketing as a strategy to enhance the teaching profession. Is that a good idea? Are we getting ready to employ social marketing regarding prevention of chronic diseases? I happen to like the whole idea of social marketing, to changing people's behavior, changing people's inclination towards, changing people's minds about. Can that be used as a strategy, as a tool to help to restore teachers? It can, but then too we have to understand that the teaching is such an interesting area, in that one can be trained as a teacher, but then still don't cut it, because teaching comes from within. There's something about the profession. You have to either like it or hate it. And if you like it, if you're committed to it, then the training you would seek is going to help you to make the job easier. So, it's one of those areas that, the things that you can do can work, but then it helps if your teachers are committed to the job, and they want to see their students excel at whatever cost, and the teachers are going to go out to make sure that their students are at that level. So it's one of those areas where if you don't like it, then you can't just sit there and just go through it, because then you do yourself a disservice and a great harm to your students and the community. And so that's why we have a lot of teachers perhaps that might need weeding out of the system and go seek another profession, because they really are disgruntled, don't have the commitment, and are just collecting a paycheck every month.
Well, we have to understand too that the profession itself is one which you can have a high burnout rate, because there's so many things that need to come together for you to be able to be successful at it. And when those things don't happen, you feel discouraged as a teacher. So you have to look at both sides. So sometimes a very good teacher, because of the environment that they're in, because they feel that they're not getting the kind of support they need from the parents, they're not getting the support from the administration, they're not getting the material they need, they're not getting this, they're not getting that, and that teacher can become disgruntled as a result of that.
And the government also have an important role to play in that.
So it all has to, the formula is very intricate. It all has to come together to give the teachers the kind of support that they need, so that they can do a good job.
Dr. Smith, I'm so sorry that's all we got time for.
All right.
But you certainly has brought a wealth of information again for us tonight, and I'm hoping to call on you periodically so we could have some of these types of discussions that I think are proven to be very, very important. Thank you very much for coming to Spotlight.
Well, thanks for having me. It's my pleasure to come and share with you.
Yes. Indeed. I really appreciate it. We're going to take another break, and we're going to come back with Commissioner Elton Georges. We're going to talk about the purpose of the Complaints Commission. Is it just for Virgin Islanders? Anybody could use it. What is the role of a commissioner? How to access the services, a whole host of things that you want to know about. Keep it locked right here to Spotlight. We'll be right back in just a moment.
This program is sponsored by the law firm of J.S. Archibald & Co. and by the trust company J.S. Archibald Trust Services Limited, both of Roadtown, Tortola, BVI.
Welcome back to Spotlight. I want to welcome my guest, Complaints Commissioner Elton Georges. Commissioner Georges, good to see you.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Yes, this is the first time on Spotlight.
I have to correct you right away. I was here 4 years ago, in 2009, shortly after we opened the office. And at that time it was to, of course it was brand new, and it was to help to introduce the office, to let people know that we were there and what we were doing.
Well, see, you're older than me, your memory is better. Yeah, I remember now. I'm glad you brought it to my attention. So you're back. Has the Complaints Commission been going well? I mean, you feel the need to wake people up?
If I feel the need to wake people up again, well, the reason I'm here is that, you know, it's 4 years ago, and we do feel the need to periodically bring it back in front of the people, in front of all the people, the residents of the Virgin Islands, that the complaints office is there and what the role of it is and what we do. Because there's so much noise, as it were, in the air these days. There's so many things happening, so many things coming at people all the time that we forget.
Yes.
If something isn't, if you haven't heard about something recently, you tend to forget about it. I forget that it's there.
So you got to stay in the public's mind.
Yes, plus there's a lot of fluidity in the population. There are people coming and going and returning. So we do need to promote the office now.
So tell us briefly, what is the purpose of the Complaints Commission?
The purpose of the Complaints Commission is, as the name implies, to take complaints. And there are complaints against government officials or departments, and when I say government, it's the whole of government, whole of what we call the public sector, which is all of the government bodies, all the bodies that the government has created or set up that are running
departments,
in the
statutory
country.
boards, everything.
Statutory boards, yes, authorities, whatever. It could even be just an advisory committee. And it comes under our jurisdiction. You know, things like the tenders board, and all the prisons, even the police. We can take complaints in regard to all of those. Now, what do you take complaints about? Well, we can take complaints. Somebody can complain about any action that a government agency has taken, or any decision they have made, or any of the processes that cause someone to suffer some loss or injustice or whatever.
You feel unfairly treated?
Yes, that is one of the things, fairness. You are entitled to get service within a reasonable time. You know, also unnecessary delay, undue delay is a cause for complaint.
And what's your role as a commissioner? You go out, or you have people working and doing investigations, or do you do investigation yourself?
But I do everything, and the office is so small because it's just myself and 2 other members of staff, and so we have to do everything. And as you know, in any office, quite apart from the actual mission of the office to do, you have to do things just to keep the office going. So accounts have to be kept, records have to be kept, things have to be purchased, and so the 3 members of staff, we have to do all of that. We don't even have an assigned messenger, so at times I have to carry stuff, take a message. But yes, so therefore I have to do investigations, as well as oversee any investigation that any of the other 2 members of staff is doing.
You have subpoena powers?
Well,
how do you get information?
We do have extensive powers to get information. We do have subpoena powers. We do have the powers of court or a judge to compel people to give evidence under oath. We have the power to demand to see any documents that we want to see, except those that the Act says we can't, which is basically just cabinet papers, or if the governor certifies something to be of national security or something. But other than those little exceptions, we have very great powers to get information, to get evidence.
what is the process for filing a complaint or accessing your services?
Under the Act, and we can deal with any complaint that is received in writing, but in practice, people can walk in off the street and tell us about a complaint. At some point, if we decide that this is a complaint that we can deal with, then we will have it reduced to writing. We have to have a written record, and we have to have that person sign to say that this is what they're complaining about, and so on. But you can do it that way. You can call up by telephone, and we will speak with you. You can email it, which is a good way, we prefer. You can put it in a letter. We have an actual complaints filing form, which we like people to use, and we encourage them to use. If they come to the office, that's what we'll use. We'll put their complaint into that, let them look at it and sign it. And you can complain on our website. We have a provision, we have a website, and we have a provision where you can lodge a complaint on that.
And what's that website? Where can you find that website, just in case they forget as well?
The address is www.ombudsman.vg. OMBUDSMAN, ombudsman.vg. It's fairly simple to remember that. Once you get the ombudsman part, ombudsman is a generic name, if you like, for what is called in our law complaints commissioner.
Okay. And if a person wanted to file a complaint, is there a series of logical steps that they should follow which would make it easy for you to deal with it?
Well, yes. First of all, we have to say that the complaints commissioner is generally not the first resort for someone who has a grievance. It's more like the last resort. It's not the first port of call, it's the last resort. In other words, we would expect persons who have a problem to try to get the department at which they got the problem to deal with it. Normally it's a problem with a junior officer, so we would expect them to ask the head of department. If it's a problem with the head of department, we would expect them to ask the permanent secretary or some senior person, the deputy governor, somebody, the minister. And then if they can't get it resolved at those levels within a reasonable time, what they think is reasonable, then they come to us. So that's one of the things that we ask them to do.
Go through the regular channels first.
Yes. Secondly, we advise people to keep a record, keep notes. We will try to deal with any complaint and we'll help, but if someone has good information, good notes about dates and persons to whom they spoke, the names of persons or the names of officials, if they have written to them and they have kept copies of those letters to which they have gotten no replies and so on, those help a great deal in assessing a complaint and investigating it and dealing with it. We also advise people to ask at departments now, in government departments, not so much statutory bodies, which not many have, to ask for something called a service charter, because nearly every department of government has a service charter, a little booklet in which they set out what their services are, what they do, and what their standards are, what you can expect when you come to this department. This is how we will treat you. And they're very detailed in many cases as to their standards, the length of time that it will take for you to get replies and so on. And most of the persons who come to us to complain, we find, have not even heard about these service charters and have not asked for them. So this is one of the messages that we try to get out now when we speak to the public. Ask for the service charter if you don't see it on the counter or at the front desk. Read it, see what they say they're going to do, and use that
to hold them accountable.
Hold them to it, yes.
Does the office receive a lot of complaints, and what kinds? I got a text.
Well, actually, most of the complaints we get, you're using the term complaints broadly here, but most of the calls or the approaches we get, and even some of the emails, are things not in our jurisdiction. And of course, now people get very impatient when we start to speak about our jurisdiction, because they think that you should be able to complain about anything. But the law under which we operate does draw lines as to what is outside of my jurisdiction to investigate. And I'd say the majority of the approaches we get are outside our jurisdiction in that sense. For example, you can't complain, you can complain, we can't investigate a complaint against a private company or private companies. Somebody's complaining about the poor taxi service or something. We can't get into that.
This is just a government agency.
Government agency. Secondly, we are not allowed to investigate any complaints about your employment situation in a government agency or department. And we get a lot of those complaints.
Your relationship with your manager, the way the boss treats you, those kind of things.
Yes, persons who feel they have been treated unfairly, dismissed unfairly, their salary isn't right.
What about things like sexual harassment and those kinds of things? Can you investigate those?
In a government department.
In a government department.
In a government department, we probably could investigate sexual harassment, as it is not to do with your employment terms and conditions. But if it depends again on the status of the employee and so on, because, for example, there are a lot of employees of government called non-established. If they have a complaint, say, about sexual harassment, and they can't get it resolved internally, they have to go to the Labor Department. The Labor Department is the recourse for non-established government employees. For the so-called established or permanent and pensionable government employees, well, they again must first try to get it resolved internally, because they have the government, the Human Resources Department, they have sexual harassment procedures to deal with those kinds of complaints, and it goes all the way through the Public Service Commission to the governor. So they have an internal machinery. If that internal machinery fails, then we may be able to take a look at it.
Do something. Now, do you get more complaints from labor, from immigration?
Yes.
What kinds of what agencies you have the most complaints against?
In the 4 years we've been there, the most complaints have been against those said departments that have to do most with the public: labor, immigration, trade, police. Not health.
Not health.
Not health. We have got relatively few complaints about the Health Services Authority or the hospital. And some of those few complaints, are very satisfied that they dealt with them when they were referred back to them, because in a lot of cases when we get a complaint which has not gone through the process of the agency or department, then we refer it to them, and we say, okay, we are referring this complaint to you because this has not really been through you as yet, and please keep us informed as to how it's resolved.
Do you follow up?
Yes, we follow up. We keep
Mm-hmm.
monitoring it. We stay in touch with the complainant to say, did you get any result? Have you heard anything? So we don't just throw it out there and forget about it.
Because that was one of the questions I was going to ask you. Because when a person that files a complaint, there's a certain level of anxiety, and they want a resolution, obviously. And I was wondering how, on average, how long has it been taken for you to get resolutions And how often do you follow up and try to relieve the anxiety of the complainant?
Well, it varies, and even when we get a complaint, which we then investigate, resolution is a relative term in a sense, in that at the end of the investigation, what I have to do is write a report. And that report will have recommendations that will recommend how the government should respond to this situation, what they should do to make things right. It is then up to them to do that. Now, we continue to monitor the response, but we don't have any power to force them to do anything. And so
you don't have a way of speeding up the process?
No, other than keep annoying them.
Yes.
Being like the widow I keep saying, in I think it's Luke chapter 18, who kept harassing the judge, who feared not God nor regarded man, and who won't take her on, but she just kept at him, and then he said, even though I don't care anything about this person, let me do it. So we do have a role like that to keep, if you like, pestering and the officers to respond. That is all the power we have, other than, after enough time has passed, to lay a special report on the table of the House to say, well, this is what we've done. We don't think that the government department has responded properly. But there's a variety of things that happen when somebody complains, because often the person just wants to get something resolved. They have applied for something, they want a reply. They want a decision. And so our first job is to try to get them that decision. Somebody has requested a report, for example, a police report. That's one of the ones we're dealing with now. A lot of time has passed. They can't get that report on an accident. And so our efforts are bent to get, for heaven's sake, get the people their report.
Get a thing done.
Yes, get it clear. Let the person get their report. Rather than saying, good, we have a complaint, we go into investigation mode and we take 2 months or something. We want to get it quickly resolved, and if we can get it quickly resolved, everybody's happy.
We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about some challenges, I think, that migrant workers have when they have complaints. Sometimes their time expired, and how do you deal with those types of situations? Also, the phone line is going to be open. You can call us or text us. We'll be right back after these words from our sponsors.
Spotlight is brought to you by Tortola Concrete Limited and CCT Global Communications.
Welcome back to Spotlight. I'm Mejuenka. I'm here with Complaints Commissioner Elton Georges, and we're talking about a Complaints Commission and how you can access the service and how to get your grievance heard and get resolutions. The number is on the screen. You can call us or you can text, and we'll be happy to answer any of your questions that we can. Sometimes, particularly with labor and immigration, migrant workers have complaints about, say, their bosses or unfair dismissal or something, and they go to labor and they have challenges with the process. Sometimes labor takes a long time. Sometimes the labor department is less than friendly, and you get all sorts of challenges. But then that person is on time. They have time in their passport from immigration. They have a work permit that's becoming expired. The stress and anxiety builds. What mechanisms do you have to help to deal with some of those types of situations?
Well, if such a person complains to us about the Labor Department, we can take the complaint and begin, as usual, first of all, to go straight back to labor and say, what's going on here, and could you please tell us, and why is this person's application or permit or whatever being held up the way it is. Again, we try to go right to the source, go to the top, to the Labor Commissioner if we need to, and get them to come back to us and with some explanation and try to resolve the matter. As I said before, we generally say to people to use their machinery. In other words, if you have a complaint against the Labor Commission, in theory you should go to the ministry with it. But it's not a hard and fast rule. I have to look at whether it's reasonable to expect this person in this situation to go there. Time is going, you know, and the anxiety is growing, and so we don't bother with that. We'll go directly and start to deal with the matter. And another thing that we do is, if there is an immigration issue involved, we will also approach the Chief Immigration Officer and explain that this person has made a complaint, we are investigating this complaint, and we would request that they be allowed time to be here to assist us with the investigation, you know, as we take it through, and so on. So, and that has worked. The Immigration Department usually would cooperate with us in that. In fact, my very first complaint in March 2009 was by someone against immigration, and the threat was that they might have to leave the country within you know, a couple of weeks or something, and go back to their own country. And we were able to stay the hand of immigration so that we could complete the investigation.
Okay, so I think that's good for persons with those challenges to know that you can intercede on their behalf to get extensions, and usually you get cooperation from the Immigration Department.
Yes, I have to stress that. We can't command them,
yeah.
But
usually you get,
you know, we use moral suasion.
Yeah. Congratulations on 4 years advocating for public, Mr. Georges. How do the heads of state regard your office and your powers? There seems to be a problem if you there seems to be a problem if you actually do your job. How does I guess the person is asking how the politicians, like if you say heads of state, I suspect that means the politicians, how they regard your investigations and you doing your job.
Yes, well, I guess I have been pretty open, and I believe that in this job, you know, we preach transparency and openness about information, that government shouldn't be keeping secrets. And I've been pretty open in my public reports, the annual reports to the House of Assembly, and in the special reports to the House of Assembly. I've been pretty open about my own disappointment with what seems to be, you know, less than enthusiastic support from the chief authorities in the government, the cabinet ministers, the governor, the heads of, the members of the House of Assembly, for the work of the Complaints Commissioner. And I was specifically referring to the fact that a lot of our recommendations for making redress to persons who have suffered at the hands of the public service have not been implemented, and I haven't seen much evidence of much pressure by those who can command these persons to implement them to do so. And in cases where ministers have to make decisions that would make redress to persons who have suffered at the hands of government, they have not been very willing to do so either. And so that, as I said, there's no point hiding it. I have made it quite plain that I think that the government, the highest authorities in the government, ought to be more forthcoming, supportive of the work of this office, and you know, making that plain to the public officers and the heads of government agencies and statutory boards, etc.
Well, isn't that your teeth, though, so to speak? I mean, the ability to come on a program like this or make a report to the House of Assembly and expose the persons who are hindering the process of resolution and dealing with grievances.
Well,
that is basically your teeth.
Yes, that helps.
Because, I mean, what other enforcement powers do you really have?
None.
None. So,
None.
So embarrassing the politicians is really the way to go.
Well,
and the civil service.
We don't set out to embarrass, that's for sure.
Well,
if embarrassment results, that's just from us trying to get the act under which we operate to be effective and to get the work done. But that is our only recourse, and in many countries, and many people in my position, ombudsmen, complaints commissioners, whatever they call, public protectors, defenders of public defenders, or defender of the citizen, that is the same situation, and they find that they have great allies in the press and the public, who can bring sometimes pressure to bear on leaders, on political leaders, particularly elected leaders, which may translate into action at the level of the officer of government.
Yeah. If you are working in poor working conditions in government, and you have exhausted all internal avenues to address it, and it is not addressed, and you continue to suffer under poor working environment, could your department deal with such a complaint?
That is something that I would believe that I would have to look at very carefully. I probably could deal with it because it is not directly connected with pay or
things that you really have no control over.
Position or promotion or some disagreement with your boss, or things of that kind. This is more going to, it sounds to me as though it's going to something, to conditions that are not, we're not talking about your conditions of service, but maybe the environmental conditions or something under which you're working.
Well, down the admin complex, there's been complaints for years about mold.
Yes. And in a lot of other buildings too. It seems to be an epidemic, this mold problem in a lot of, even the new constructed buildings.
So you can go in and well, how would you do that though? How would you investigate a condition with mold? How would you deal with it?
Well, in theory, the act under which I operate gives me the authority to engage specialists, experts.
Okay.
So in theory, I could get an expert in this field to actually, examine the condition if I needed that. But in a lot of cases, there are already reports. You'll find sometimes when you go to investigate these things that the problems are well known. They have been researched. The reports have been written. They're there. And so you may not need to, to reinvent the wheel in that sense. So that's what we do. We'll see what is known about this. What's the scientific data that's been collected? We will look at, the dialogue between the workers and the administration and develop a case in that way.
And again, you want to stress to the listeners, they need to keep records.
Yes, very much so.
Because
we can't stress it enough. They need to keep a record. They need to keep a copy of everything that they write, that
read
they
everything,
receive,
write everything
that they receive. We sometimes have people come and say, "Well, I have written letters to this person and that person. They haven't replied." Well,
But they don't keep
your copy of the
keep
letter.
a copy of the letter. Yeah.
Now, if they're written and it's on a government file and we're investigating, we should be able to find it there. We should be able to find it there.
But that's not necessarily true.
Yes, if we don't find it there, then there's very little evidence that if you don't have your copy.
So if you have it saved on your computer, for example, is
Right.
that's adequate?
That's adequate. That's at least the start. You know.
Now, do you have help?
But coming back, before I go on to that kind of question that you just had, that is the kind of matter in which we might mount what you call a systemic on-motion investigation, rather than do it as an individual complaint of one person. Because if they're talking about poor environmental conditions in a building, then, you know, that's going to affect a lot of other people too.
Right.
So we would then do a general investigation into that.
If someone has to go to court, for example, can you help with a
No, we
person?
can't. We are forbidden from dealing with a complaint if the person in fact can take it to court. Unless in all the circumstances it is unreasonable to expect them to do so. I mean, we have dealt with complaints where the complainant, the person complaining, could take the government to court for maybe breaching a contract or something. But
Person doesn't have the means.
they don't have the means, you know, it would take a long time. This is the problem with courts. Courts are set up to deal with the problem, but courts could take a very long time.
And it costs a whole lot of money.
And costs a lot of money. And that may not be available to the person. And so we may take a complaint, notwithstanding that they can go to court with it. If they have already started an action in court, we can't help them to go to court, and in general we don't even we can't go into court and give evidence or that kind of thing. And the law under which I operate forbids that. What we do is not used to be used in evidence and that kind of thing in a court of law. So they'll have to.
And you don't have anything to do with legal assistance?
No, we don't.
Things?
No, I don't. We have been requesting, one of the things that, you know, we complain about in our annual reports is we have been requesting having a legal officer, a counselor, a lawyer on our staff, because we see the need for it. But that's for to keep us on the straight and narrow and to assist me with my work, because there's a lot of times you have to read the law, you have to interpret the law, and so on. And we need that person there to keep us on the straight and narrow in that sense. But no, we can't do that. What we can take a complaint is if somebody complains that, you know, the legal aid system is not adequate.
You could investigate.
We could look into that.
Okay, that's it. That's interesting. Now, when you've gone through the process, you've had a complaint, and you've gone through the process, and a decision has been made for a resolution, and let's say the government agency is dragging its feet, what's your recourse?
Well, you just said a decision. You mean a recommendation?
Well,
has been made.
Yeah, I don't know what I mean. But something has happened. You've gone through, you had an investigation, and you say, well, this person should be restored to this position.
Yes. Yeah, that's called a recommendation.
Excuse me.
I can only recommend it. I recommended no action by the government. Well, there's nothing I can do other than, as I said, now write it up in a report and make it public by laying it before the House of Assembly. That's what the law specifically provides. I do a report, and I ask the Premier to lay it on the table in the House of Assembly, so other members, the members of the House of Assembly, can see it. because every report I do has to go to the ministers, the members of cabinet, the Attorney General, to the governor. So they already have the report. If they read it, they would see what I'm saying, what I'm recommending. So nothing is happening. If nothing happens within a reasonable time, then by sending it to the House of Assembly, other members of the House of Assembly can now read this report and see what was said, and they have the option of doing something in whatever way, either privately speaking to the minister, or to the minister concerned, or to the governor, or asking questions on it in the House. No such, well, certainly no public action has been taken, like asking a question about anything in the House on any of our reports.
Well, can you come to the public directly? Can you say, come on a show and say,
yes,
you've had this complaint, this recommendation was made, and up to now you can't get that recommendation?
Well, once we've done a special report and it's been laid on the table, and we have in some cases then had a press conference and talked about it. Yes, at that point, yes, we can go to the public. I can go to the public and speak, which is a freedom that most civil servants don't have. Okay. In that same sense.
What if I know about possible corruption within a government office? Can you deal with it? Can you protect me if I blow the whistle, so to speak? Will I be victimized if I complain?
Well, if it's in a government office, there's something already called the Public Service Code, which protects a civil servant who blows the whistle by going over the head of department. If the head of department is involved or doesn't do any especially, then that civil servant will have to go to someone higher, like governor, the deputy governor. And the Civil Service Code is specific in saying that that person is protected in doing that. Now, what I would like to see is that this be enshrined in a law. In a lot of countries now, they're passing these what you call whistleblowers laws, which are very specific in giving protection to someone who brings to light in good faith. Mind you, we have to use that phrase. In good faith means that the person really believes and has good reason to believe that something wrong is going on, and not that somebody's doing it maliciously or mischievously or recklessly, just carelessly, but someone who in good faith brings forward information about possible corruption or other wrongdoing, that person has the full protection of the law and of the courts. It's better to have it in a law rather than just,
the optional
a general order, or public service code or something of that kind, which is not law, but still, it's there. Now, I don't have any direct role in any such thing. No, if you're asking if the commissioner has any direct role in a matter like that, no, I don't. But I certainly,
would like to see that strengthened.
I certainly would like to see that strengthened, and that, I think, is a recommendation I've made.
Okay, before 9:30 o'clock.
Already.
Anything you wanted to get out that I neglected to ask, but I know that I'd like to have repeated how to get in contact with you, your website and your email address.
Yes, our email address, complaints@ombudsman.vg. Complaints@ombudsman.vg. That's the main one. Our website, www.ombudsman.vg. Our telephone number, you'll find that on our website, which is 468-5123. And we would just like to remind people that the office is there, we are working, and we encourage persons who have justified complaints to use it, to complain. And in a recent interview I gave with a paper, I made the point that by complaining about things you need to complain about, you're doing a public service, because you're not only helping yourself, but this may help other people to not fall prey to the same bad service or whatever it was, or mistake or whatever it was that happened that caused your complaint. And so we encourage people to complain. Complaining has a bad name. People, say, oh, you're a whiner, you're this, you're that.
But it's important.
But it's important for that reason. A justified complaint is important for that reason.
Commissioner Elton Georges, thank you very much for being my guest on Spotlight. I really appreciate it. A lot of information. We hope that persons will be able to benefit from that information. And you're located
at present on 80 Main Street, which is just next to the old post office down on Main Street there, and diagonally across from police headquarters, Salva George's Plaza, upstairs.
That's on top of where J.R.
used to be J.R. O'Neill drugstore.
Yes.
Thank
okay.
you.
Well, thank you very much for being my guest.
My pleasure.
Thank you for watching Spotlight. Thanks for your words of encouragement, your suggestions and criticisms. Continue to email me at jtvspotlight@yahoo.com. Don't forget, Spotlight is rebroadcast every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. here on JTV Channel 55. You can also view Spotlight on demand at jtvlive.net. I'm Edjuenka, reminding you that when the Spotlight is on, you see the facts. Peace and blessings.
This program is sponsored by the law firm of J.S. Archibald & Co. and by the trust company J.S. Archibald Trust Services Limited, both of Roadtown, Tortola, BVI.